1771. 800 989 1771. 800 989 1771.
The Carolina Swap Shop. Buy, sell, trade. Weekdays, 10 a.m. Call 888-331-0269.
The following program is a paid advertisement and does not necessarily represent the views, opinions, or endorsements of Signal Hill Media Partners, its affiliate stations, or its advertisers.
Say what you want.
Welcome to We're Just Sayin' with Senator Vickie Sawyer and co-host David Coble. Join them each week as they provide the latest updates on legislation affecting North Carolina, from breaking down key bills to answering your live call-in questions.
the government has come over to America and purchased land. And that was one of the House bills that you guys had taken interest in and hopefully are going to be supportive of. Talk to me a little bit about the state of China, how they're owning land, how they're buying farmland in America, and especially in our backyards in North Carolina.
Sure. This is a very useful issue for Americans to focus on the unequal relationship with China. So one thing that we focus on is reciprocity. So Chinese government, Chinese state-owned corporations, as well as ostensibly private corporations, although in China, pretty much every large company that would be in the position to buy land overseas in the United States is somewhat government controlled, or at least has CCP members on their board. As of a couple of years ago, they had no restrictions on buying land in the United States, agricultural land or real estate near sensitive sites. Now, would we have the ability to buy land in China? The suggestion is absurd. We can't buy land, agricultural land over there. We can't buy land near a military base. Even Chinese citizens don't effectively own companies in a private way. So this relationship is completely uneven. Now, a couple of years ago, states started to put into place laws which restricted. Often it would be sometimes they would single out the CCP. Sometimes there would be a list of 4 countries. Now in North Carolina, this bill is relying on a State Department list of arms trafficking countries. But usually, whatever the list is, whatever the designation, it ends up being China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, some combination of that, maybe adding Cuba, etc. Now, first of all, this is obviously about food security, that Americans should control their own agricultural land. It's an integral part of independence. Now, North Carolina actually has the distinction of being one of the top states of CCP-owned agricultural land, and that's because of Smithfield. And that's because Smithfield was acquired by a Chinese company, a few years back. So actually, it varies because the records are not great at the federal level, and that's part of the problem. But North Carolina may have a third to a half of the CCP-owned agricultural land in the country. So that's crazy. And now, listen, we can drill further in, but just to mention the other part of the bill, which is very important, and that is, so there's dual parts of this bill. There's the ag land part, and then there's the ban on ownership within 75 miles of military installations. Again, North Carolina should be at the top of this list because so many important installations, which are by name in the bill, including Camp Lejeune and Fort Bragg.
Yeah, that is very eerie to me when you say that North Carolina represents maybe a third to a half of foreign-owned land, because it is down east, and we have major military institutions down east. I think we have 3 of them, and all branches. It is the second largest or third largest industry in North Carolina is our military. And now you're telling me that we have at the top of the list for foreign-owned land.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Well, I know, and this is why it's needed. A lot of people, the first objection is that, well, China doesn't own that much land in the United States, and in relative terms, it doesn't. Foreign-owned land is I think about 3 or 4% of the total agricultural land in the United States, and China only owns about 1% of that. It's mostly owned by our allies. Canada has huge ownership up on the border, like timberland and all this sorts of stuff. Listen, it doesn't matter that China has relatively low percentage. We're talking 400 to 500,000 acres, again, depending on the way you measure it, which is not, the records are not kept very well. But listen, it only takes a small patch of land. Just imagine it, 10 acres, 100 acres, 200 acres here or there to have a platform for surveillance and sabotage. That's the important thing. A place to put drones, a place for listening devices, a place to base spies. And this sort of thing happens in northern Michigan. There were 4 or 5, I think that they were grad students, but effectively probably Chinese agents, and they drove up to a National Guard base and sort of stumbled up to the gate. This happens. This also happens in Fort Pendleton, I believe, in California. So very, very odd coincidences where platforms where Chinese citizens show up and then show up at military bases.
So, Adam, you mentioned that North Carolina sort of at the top of the list. What's next? Like, where else are we seeing this outside of North Carolina?
I mean, it's really simultaneous everywhere. Like I was saying, there are these instances in Michigan. But let me tell you the two events that sort of sparked or at least accelerated this move to put these laws into place were two examples that now at the federal level, what's supposed to be protecting us from incoming purchases like this, not only agricultural land, but also tech purchases and other things that affect the national security of the U.S. It's called the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS. It's an interagency board at the federal level that looks at these incoming purchases. But two examples in recent years that it fell through the cracks and that have spurred these state movements. So in 2019 in Texas, a Chinese billionaire put about $110 million into Texas farmland near Laughlin Air Force Base. This would have given him access to the Texas electricity grid. And CFIUS actually signed off on this proposal in December 2020. It took local and state action, basically exposing it in the press as well to deter the development of this land. And then in 2022, this wasn't agricultural land, and that's why it's important to have the proximity. A Chinese-backed cryptocurrency mining farm purchased land within 1 mile of Francis E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. This includes our military, our nuclear arsenal in close proximity to that. CFIUS eventually took action, but it took 2 years of that installation being there, and it was on an anonymous tip. So our system is not working. This is why the states need to step in.
Clearly, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that all this land that they're looking to buy are near our military bases. I'm sure it's
Right.
There's no correlation at all with those purchases.
Sure.
Yeah, no barriers.
Yeah. So Adam, one of the things you mentioned was about the also not just land but also tech sector and things like that. What are some things that, I mean, because obviously it seems to me, because like, you know, I deal in my professional career in land purchases, and I can understand how difficult it must be to track these kind of purchases. You know, because I mean, all you need is an LLC, you know, a tax ID number, and you can go in and buy, you know, land. It's not a complicated process, and land it moves so much in our country. Keeping track of this, I mean, you know, to be fair, has got to be exceedingly difficult. What are the measures that are being put in place? I mean, obviously you mentioned there's a committee, but what are the measures that are being put in place to better be able to track these things?
You know, that's very difficult, and I'm definitely not a real estate expert. Although, you know, I've learned a little bit in this this, you know, this quest that we're doing. But the reporting mechanisms are just not up to snuff. There's something called a FIDA under the USDA, which thankfully they put something in there to track foreign land purchases, and that's what we base this number somewhere between the 300 and 500,000 acres that China owns. But even they say, hey, this is a minimum amount here that we've tracked. There's all sorts of subsidiaries and as you mentioned, shell companies. And if they really want to hide it, they can. And that's why, although, you know, this North Carolina bill is an incredibly important step, it does only have those state owned enterprises. So when you go down further, this technically would not cover that. Now, listen, if this passes, which would be a great victory, and it would put you ahead of the majority of states. But yes, as you're pointing out, and I'm just talking about tracking the agricultural land. Forget about the real estate. You know, you could tell me, but I think it varies by state. It varies by locality. Ohio simultaneously right now, for the second or third year, is trying to refine and get a law through like this. And they're putting it at the county level to monitor. So I don't know the disposition of their state that may make more sense. North Carolina, it might make different sense. I think Ohio started out housing it with the Secretary of State of the state. But no, the answer is the beautiful thing about the U.S. We have this patchwork of states and localities, but the problem is it's hard to monitor those purchases.
Absolutely. You know, we had looked into other stuff, especially when we're talking about blind LLCs. So, you know, you have these LLCs that are registered with the state of North Carolina, but the only registered agent is the attorney that set them up. You don't really know how they're made, what they're comprised of, who they're comprised of. And so you're right. It sounds like really simple, right? Hey, we'll just make sure that folks who are from China can't buy land in North Carolina. But it is so difficult to regulate and define and to pinpoint. So I'm glad that you guys are picking up this mantle and making sure that America's first.
Well, it's not just attorneys, there are actual companies out there that basically will serve as your registered agent. LegalZoom, for example. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
LegalZoom can be your registered agent. And so when you go and begin tracking these land purchases, you go through and you say, well, okay, well, who's the registered agent for the company? Well, it's LegalZoom. Well, that really kind of stops you. There's nowhere else to go
Right.
from there.
Right.
And then the address that the mail goes to is a LegalZoom mail stop
Yeah.
location.
Yeah.
So it is exceedingly difficult. But Adam, in the couple minutes we have left with you, I'm curious, you would think something like this would be a bipartisan issue, something everybody could really get behind, be Republican or Democrat. Do you all see opposition to this? And if so, what's that opposition look like?
There is opposition, and actually, it's some portions of the right and the left. There is more opposition on the left, and here's the unfortunate. Well, let me state this very clearly. This has to do with ownership by the Chinese Communist Party. This does not have to do with ethnically Chinese people. This does not have to do with American citizens. And these laws are about protecting American citizens of all races, backgrounds, religions, etc. But unfortunately, the way some of these laws are constructed, there is some wiggle room. Where in Texas there was a bill where there was opposition on the basis of, okay, could this affect mortgages of legal residents from these countries? There's been arguments that what about refugees from these countries who are are making a good faith effort to integrate, and then this is blocking them from owning. So part of that is rabble rousing on the part of the left. Part of that is you got to be precise with these laws, and it takes some experimentation to get it right.
Yeah.
On the right side, or let's say on the farmer side, we at first a couple of years ago we really faced resistance. South Dakota was one place, and Mississippi, especially the Farm Bureau, and their big argument is, hey, these farmers or these families have had these properties in their family for generations. If they want to sell it to the highest bidder, we should not be interfering with that. And also, sometimes, depending on the configuration of the law, the governor may have a great deal of power in determining. Like, for example, in South Dakota, their initial law when Kristi Noem was governor was something like a CFIUS, that board at the state level. So basically, the governor and experts and the ag commissioner would have the final say. So people more on the libertarian right were concerned that, hey, this is too much centralized power in with the government. But it's mostly conservative Republican support. There definitely is Democrat support, and if you write it, if the law is crafted correctly, it definitely can have bipartisan support.
Well, Adam, I want to say thank you so much for calling into the show. Thank you for introduction to the American First Policy organization. We definitely will work with you guys and have you back on the show on Fridays. And again, if you want to learn more about Adam and the organization that he represents, go to AmericanFirstPolicy.com. Thank you for calling in, Adam.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks,
you.
Adam. No, that
You notice,
well,
I
really
notice I
interesting.
didn't say his last name.
Well, he pronounced it for us.
I know.
You know,
but if you were to see like what was going on in my thought bubbles in my head, I was like, so I just said Adam.
I'm gonna be fair with you. Of all the things I need in my life, knowing what's going on in your thought bubble is not one of them. That is just something that I'm just not equipped to handle. I'm gonna be fair with you. But I mean, it's interesting because like a lot of people don't realize this kind of thing happens. And when you sit there and you hear about China owning tons of land near our military bases
in North Carolina,
it's like, wait a minute, wait. How did we get here again?
Yeah.
Like, how did this happen? But it's like, it's not a problem until, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize the thing. So it's great that there's organizations like this out there, making sure that they safeguard, not just our farmers and our agricultural land, but also the land around our militaries. And I also get it. The South Dakota, pushback, property rights is an important thing.
Yeah,
it's a foundational principle in this country. So it is a delicate balance into how you balance individual property rights with things like national security and things like that. And that
Which
goes
was
local all the way to national.
And speaking of local, and just we had that same argument, and I had that argument about the toll lanes and I-77 being, absolutely controlled by a foreign entity or so. So yeah, I think we definitely need to review all these things and see where this money's coming from. But you're right, we hear the same argument not just about farmland with farmland, but also about development as well, right?
Yeah.
And you hear that, so it's a tricky.
Well, and to be fair,
slope.
pretty much all development is taking place on what used to be farmland. I mean, if we're being honest, especially in our area. And so, and I
Yeah.
know that, there's, in every, county and city across the country, as cities grow and stuff like that, they grow out.
Right.
And as they
Right.
continue to grow out, that's farmland.
Yeah.
And that is a valid argument. These people have owned this land for
Mhm.
generations. Kids
Paid
nowadays
taxes on
don't
it.
want to farm. They pay taxes. They don't want to
Mhm.
farm. It's a retirement thing for them. They
Mhm.
have somebody willing to pay them a very good price for it. They can retire like that. Why should they be denied the ability to do that?
Yeah.
Why is it a problem that they want to do that? So it is it's absolutely a delicate balance, but you're on the case. So I feel like that we can get it taken care of pretty
You
easy.
mean that's one of my thought bubbles?
That's one of your, well, so I'm going to take your word for it. You're listening to We're Just Saying. We'll be right back.
We all play a role in keeping our community safe.
Every day, we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little moments that make up our everyday.
Some are good, others not so much.
But that's life.
It's when something doesn't seem quite right that it's time to pay attention.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Bravo, Brenda. You've always been a saver. Price matching your price matches. The self-proclaimed queen of extreme couponing. But this time, you've truly outdone yourself. By saving for this electric vehicle, you're locking in up to $1,000 a year in fuel and maintenance savings, which will leave you saying, cha-ching, every time you unplug. Good for your wallet, great for the planet. That's the power of EV. Sponsored by the ANC Clean Energy Technology Center and the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters in cooperation with this station.
Plan on flying? It's time to upgrade to a real ID. Because in order to board domestic flights, your driver's license or state-issued ID must be a real ID, or you'll need another acceptable form of identification. So don't wait. Find out how to get your real ID at tsa.gov/real ID. That's tsa.gov/real ID, or visit your local DMV. And then you'll be cleared for takeoff.
Hurricane Helene, devastating impacts on the southeast. Now it's time to help the people and communities who need it most. To make a one-time financial gift to the American Red Cross and enter how much you'd like to donate. Or go to redcross.org/donate. Together, we will make a difference for those recovering in hard-hit communities.
We all want more for North Carolina. More boundless views, more adventures in the outdoors, and more clean roads to get there. But to get more, we have to do less. Less littering, that is. Make it your nature to trash your trash and keep NC clean. And we'll all have more reasons to love North Carolina. Litter less, get more. For more on the 7 outdoor NC Leave No Trace principles, visit OutdoorNC.com. Sponsored by the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters and Visit North Carolina, a part of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina in cooperation with this station.
Welcome back to We're Just Saying with Senator Vickie, Sawyer, and David. Like to be part of the show, 704-873-9929. So General Assembly was on break for like a week. So much like NASCAR, who doesn't race on Easter, you didn't pass any laws or do any work throughout the course of Easter break.
Well, we did work.
You did
it was
work?
my emails.
Oh, by email.
Crazy. So it gave everybody time to know what was going on, and they all emailed us. I think it's just like crazy. But no, you know what I did?
What did you do?
I did like pressure washing. Do you ever pressure wash?
So you literally, like you weren't not metaphorically.
The last,
you was like actual
I
pressure
took
wash.
time, and I did not put in earbuds. I didn't do anything. It was just me, myself, and I, and a pressure washer.
Nice. That's
And
therapeutic.
It is wonderful because it's so much time, and I know that every job probably has similar characteristics, but when it comes to being a legislator, there's always something to be done. And it seems like it never gets done, right?
Mhm.
Or it's just there's always this like constant hum of emails and bickering and fights and and just all of the noise of the world and life comes down into the legislature. And you almost feel like a sin eater sometimes because all you hear is people complain. It's like I don't really think I've gotten a call like, Senator Sawyer, you're doing a fabulous job by returning these emails. You know what I mean?
By returning these emails.
Yeah, they're just like, well, why'd
you
you
like
say
want you want like the data people to call you up and say, "Sir, sorry, we wanted you to
Yes.
know that we have been looking at your email traffic. You've done such a good job
I
answering your
know. I
emails."
need like self affirmations. What was that old Saturday Night Live skit? And he would sit and look at the Stuart Smalley. Remember
Oh
that?
yeah,
He'd
good
look in the
enough. You're
mirror.
smart enough, and doggone it, people like you.
And people like me. Not everybody. But yeah, so I took some time this week and did stuff around the house and like the pressure washing was very, very nice. And I, had great internal conversations, if I do say so myself. I listened back to our radio show though during one of the little stints
Oh,
of
did
last
you?
week. Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get any hate mail or anything.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I've been pushing hard. I mean, I was pretty obnoxious last week about a few things, and we didn't even get the comments on Facebook.
No, I know. But you know what else has been pretty obnoxious?
What's that?
The complaints about the Department of Motor Vehicles.
It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
It is awful. So every day in my email, there is someone complaining about the DMV, and I don't blame them. They have a right to. I mean, there are services that have been provided by the government, and we are failing. They are failing these folks. I mean, a girlfriend of mine went to take her 16-year-old daughter or 17-year-old daughter now to get what they call their after nines. Have you had to do that?
Not yet. Ellie hasn't qualified
Ellie,
for her after nine.
when will she qualify for that?
She
Like
won't
a month
qualify. She's got to get her 60 hours in first because
Oh, yeah.
we just got her permit.
Oh,
we
yeah,
had
yeah.
like about a 5-month wait to get
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
DMV to get, and she's 16 already. But she didn't get her permit until a few weeks back.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nuts. And yesterday, so I've been telling folks go to Taylorsville or go to Jacksonville, somewhere that's not as populated. And she was there yesterday at like 7:30 in the morning, and it was already 30 people deep waiting
Wow.
in Taylorsville.
So word's out. People are going out to further places further out that aren't as aren't as crowded.
It is. It's. I mean, and I hats off to Governor Josh Stein for really focusing on this, but it has really been thrown on his plate because it is an executive branch function that they answer to the Department of Transportation, who's appointed by the governor. We have over 10 years. Since we've been doing the budget, we have invested like $170 million for them to upgrade their system. And you know what the agency does?
What?
Eh.
Yeah. Isn't this the budget appropriation that got spent and nothing got upgraded?
Yes. Yes.
I'd heard tell about that.
Yes. And then, we were sitting there talking about like, we have passed so many laws that they have ignored. We have passed so many budgets that they have not invested in. We have done so much to make that agency better. And that agency just has now the people on the ground. We've said this before on the show, the examiners and those folks who are working day in and day out, they are doing their darn best to do what they do pretty good with the tools they've been given.
Yeah.
But
This is not a problem that can be fixed inside the local DMV. This is down in Raleigh.
This
has
is
got to be fixed.
absolutely at the management level that needs to be, and it's not necessarily the commissioner. I think Commissioner Goodwin has done the best he can, but I'm telling you that that agency's leadership below the commissioner has chewed up and spit out some really good people over time because they're like weebies. We be here when you get here. We be here when you're gone.
Mhm.
I mean, they are the quintessential bureaucrats of all bureaucrats, and their protectionism and their negative and the way they treat their employees is just it's the culture has got to change.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that Governor Stein has made it a mission to make it better, but right now the pain is real.
Mhm.
It is really real, and I just don't know what to do to tell people. And
Well, at some point in time, you have to wonder. And again, this is not a recommendation you've made, obviously, because it'll be highly problematic, I'm sure. But at some point in time, you just got to think, look, we just got to blow it up and privatize it. Just blow it up and privatize it. Get it out of the state's hands
Agreed.
completely. Just make it because I guarantee you, if you went through and privatized this in 6 to 8 months, you'd have an app,
Yes.
you'd have processes. I mean,
Yes.
you would be ready to go because, and I've shared this before, when I was going to travel overseas a number of months ago, everything was digital. Like going into England and everything like that which is where I was supposed to be landing into. Took a picture of my face, scanned my passport. It did everything. I paid for my my right to enter England, I guess you could say. I paid for all that and everything like that.
Yeah.
And boom, I was done. And it
Yeah.
was all from home. Every
Yeah.
last bit of it. You could do that, but I can't get a driver's license renewed.
And here's the thing, like there are states that don't that have completely automated systems and doing a great job. West Virginia, by God, West Virginia can do it. We can do it. Um, I have, I have asked and researched, and I really don't have a good answer. Why is it okay for me to get my passport renewed at a with a Walgreens picture at a post office, and I can travel anywhere in the world, but I have to stand in line at the DMV to get my picture taken?
Yep.
It is not a federal law that you have to have your picture taken at the DMV. It is just an archaic, outdated system, and those type of. I think we should blow it up. And license plate agencies are privatized.
Yes, they are.
I mean, so I know sometimes when people move in, they're like, why do I have to go one place to get my driver's license and the other place to get my driving tags? Well, that's because the license plate agencies are completely independent of the DMV as far as that is concerned, and they are privatized. And and I know folks grumble and complain about that, but unfortunately, they have to use the same outdated, it's called saddles system that is back and written in code that was our grandparents language, and the system crashes all the time. But they do have a really good private ownership that tries their hardest to deliver the best service they can with the tools they've been given. But you know what I'm thinking?
What's that?
Why can't we use that license plate agency to certify just like a post office does, right? So, you go to the post office, you have your passport paperwork. There's someone who literally goes in and looks and says who you are, and then they send it off. Why can't we do that with a license plate agency?
No reason we
I
couldn't.
mean, you could just absolutely get everything done. They certify who you are, and then you send it off, and the next thing you know, in the mail, you get your driver's license.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I know you guys, the Senate passed its budget.
Yeah.
Did y'all throw any money in there to fix this?
You know what? Actually, we took it away.
Did you take it away?
Yeah, because we have been, over time, we have, well, first of all, it's like a rudderless ship. There is no person that is leading it. So we don't know. You can't throw good money after bad leadership.
Right.
Right. So we were like, you know what? Y'all figure out what you're going to do and come to what was a real ask.
Yeah.
They had asked for, people on the ground for driver's license examiners. Understand, but we have given them over and over and over again. And until you have the right system, you're not going to be able to fix it with just putting people. How do you train someone to be a driver's license examiner within 2 days? You
Right.
can't, right? It takes
Can't.
a long time to get people up and running. So yeah, so we, again, this is a budget process. We did take money away from them. We did not honor some of that request that they did because we're like, fix it.
Yeah.
Tell us your plan to fix it, other than just saying we need more employees.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm down with giving you more employees. I'm do anything we can do to make it better. But with you just not having a commissioner, with not having some real next steps or vision or focus, then what are you going to do? Right.
Yeah, exactly. What were some? So obviously the Senate passed its budget. The House is still working on
Ooh,
theirs.
I want to see what the House is going to do. I'm excited.
Are you?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
Well, I mean, because it's going to be nothing. It's going to be majority of things you don't like. I mean, you people in the Senate, man, you don't like when the House sends their budget over. You don't like seeing what's in there.
If you're a good senator, you have really good friends on the House too.
Oh,
So
okay.
I mean, it doesn't mean that every idea that they have is bad, and and I mean, then that
Well,
is
it's not the ideas you have a problem with; it's the amount of money. That seems to be what you guys seem to argue about more. Is they want to? The House, as a general rule, generally wants to put more money
Yeah.
into certain things than the Senate does.
Yeah. And it's just the makeup of the House, right? I mean, there's more members, there's
Right.
120, there's only 50
More
of
people to
us,
please.
more people to please, and they do have a culture of pork barrel spending. Yes, I will say it.
Because you would never do that in the Senate. No pork in the Senate.
You know what? I was not going to get in trouble, but when me and myself and I were pressure washing, I was thinking about something. I really am frustrated with the amount of money we don't give to some of our state employees, and that we will give to like corporations like EDPNC, like that
Mhm.
whole thing. We've honored and made commitments to the people who live in North Carolina about the roads primarily, right? And DMV, I mean, all of these basic services that we have made commitments to the people who elect us and put us in there. And then we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars like on a children's hospital. or all this money on, recruiting businesses when we can't take care of the ones that we already have. I mean, we have legacy businesses who have been promised roads for years and years and years, and that still those promises go unanswered. And then we're going out. It's kind of like, remember that old song, "Make New Friends, but Keep the One Old."
Yeah.
Wait, I just totally messed that up.
Actually, no, I have no idea what you're talking
No,
about.
I wouldn't either. What is it? "Make new friends, but keep the old." One is.
No.
You don't know that song?
No,
One
sorry,
is
I'm
silver
drawing
and
a
the
blank.
other's gold.
Billy?
Okay. Look,
sorry.
Was that just something I did?
I think you
I
may have
just
just.
made that
I
up.
think you
No,
just
that's
wrote
a
it.
real song.
Okay, I'll take your word.
It's a real song.
I'll take your word for it. I have never heard it though.
But I'm like,
was it like a kindergarten song?
Yeah,
Or?
make
Okay.
new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other's gold.
Okay. Now
You don't remember
drawing
that?
a blank. Don't remember
Oh
it.
my gosh. No, but so I'm, to that point, like, why are we spending all this money on expansion services when we need to really invest on the people who work with us already, and we need to invest on the roads and infrastructure that we have? And I know that's not a popular opinion because, there are a lot of folks, especially in my caucus, who enjoy being able to cut a ribbon on a new hospital or a new all this other stuff that we get, big job announcement and all this other things. I don't like, let's build a wall. Let's do North Carolina first policy. I want North Carolina first. I don't
Well,
want to, but I know if you don't try, I mean, I know that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, it's it's a give and take, no doubt about it. But a great way to make sure that you guys can get more hospitals and cut more ribbons is get rid of certificate of need law. Get rid of that. Get rid of that,
That's in our
and you
budget.
can cut it. You can cut a ribbon at multiple different hospitals, I'm sure. And I'm glad to see that was in the budget. Is it going to make it past the House?
You know what, though? I think it's all going to be taken out of our hands anyways, because there is a court case going on right now in North Carolina about certificate of need. And remember, certificate of need is like this mother may I build a hospital kind of moment, or mother may I have a dialysis machine, or it's this regulatory overlord MRI machine. Yeah, this regulatory overlord that you have to say that was set up, I guess, gosh, years and years and years ago. So I mean, that is absolutely one of the reasons that it was in the budget, is because there is some outdated practices for certificate of need. But then on the other side, it really is hard if you are a hospital and you have built out your plan based on this regulatory certificate of need, and then you got a 10-year plan with your capital and all this other stuff, and then if it should be taken away, I don't know that really does the right thing. I think it should be gradually reduction over time, so that hospitals can rejigger their business plan. That's a very technical word.
That is a
right?
word.
Yes,
That is a word.
I didn't make that one up.
No, you didn't make that. I have heard
Did I
that one
enunciate?
before.
Did I enunciate
You
it?
enunciated it correctly.
Okay,
Yes.
good. All right.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. There
I
it is.
still have never heard it.
Yeah. Okay.
Still
Well,
have never heard it.
you've grown today.
But well, here's what I will say is
Yeah.
There we go again.
The other goal.
I will say this is that, from a hospital standpoint and everything like that, I completely understand, well, hey, we built out our plan around certificate of need under the understanding that another hospital would not be, built. Another MRI facility would not be built. And I get that. I get that argument. My counter to that would be, you know what? If you do the things at the medical care at a hospital, great, and your MRI services are great, then you should not worry about someone opening one down the street, because people are still going to come to you because you've done it great.
Yeah.
And that has always been my biggest qualm inside of healthcare, is the competition factor, is the fact that in so many of these instances, these things are monopolies. And I mean, when you look at healthcare right now and everything like that, one of the biggest driver of cost, in my opinion, is the fact is it's so limited, because we hamstring. And you say North Carolina, you've said it before, highest for health insurance costs in the country. How is that remotely possible?
Because it's monopoly.
Because it's a monopoly. There are very few systems that control pretty much the nonprofit atrium, quote unquote, if you're always for it, the nonprofit atrium.
I know I've never met really a broke atrium person.
I've never have either. And again, not to throw shade, because hospital services are important. But if you're good at it and you do it well and you do it for a reasonable cost, guess what? You don't have to worry about competition and open up down the street.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Just my perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
state insurance, or former state treasurer Falwell. called them a cartel.
Yeah, well,
Oh, yeah.
and there are similarities.
I'm going to tell you, I think the real cartel is the insurance company. We do have, it's easy to beat up on doctors or nurses or, all this other stuff. And the hospitals, it's very easy to beat up on them. But a lot of times they have formulated their business plan based on reimbursement from insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, and
Well,
so
it's completely based
it's-
on reimbursement from your insurance.
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of these things that seem so counterintuitive to good healthcare really is mandated by the insurance company.
Mhm.
And we have conversations about all of these things, but we really need to get down to the gritty of how the insurance cartels
Mhm.
are really the ones who are the Illuminati of this whole deal.
Oh, well, no, I mean, and again, there's definitely not putting the whole blame on the medical providers because they
Yeah.
are victims of what the insurance companies
Yeah.
say they will pay.
Yeah.
And they have to get creative in how they charge and how they do
Mhm.
things. And they have to jump through all the hoops,
Mhm.
of insurance companies denying everything out of
know,
the
gosh.
outset and then coming back and you have to fight and to fight. And it's time and it's
Mhm.
time and it's money and it's money and it's effort. And the healthcare is completely in across the board, minus I think the people on the ground, the doctors and the nurses. This is not a creation of them.
Mhm.
All right. This is a creation of a system,
Right.
at a management
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
administrative level, and insurance level. It is
Yeah.
not them. And I say that as a wife who is a nurse practitioner,
Yes, she is.
who voices who comes home and voices multiple times the frustrations she has to go through and has gone through in her life in dealing with things. So it's not
Mhm.
doctors and nurses and providers. It is at a management and administration level.
Yeah.
And it is lost sight of patient outcomes.
Right.
It is, people say, oh, it's about the patient, about the patient. No, it's really not.
I know.
It's about the reimbursement rate and it's about what you
Mhm.
can get through and about how you can manage costs.
Mhm.
And there's no silver bullet to it, but I agree with you. You got to start at the insurance company levels
Mhm.
and what they're charging. And because I mean, what's funny to me is that insurance companies these days are just big banks. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just not lending money. They're paying out insurance
exactly
claims.
right.
But everything that goes into securities and
Mhm.
bonds and investment vehicles and things like that. And so they have shareholders and they're looking to get shareholder return. And again, I'm a capitalist, love that. But this is probably healthcare, and I will say this: healthcare is probably the one area of our, and I have grown into this over time.
Mhm.
The one area that I really feel like you should not be for profit, and I don't mean nonprofit in the atrium sense. I mean not for profit. I think there
Oh.
should be
Single payer?
honestly, I think it should be similar to a utility. I think that there should be a reasonable rate of return. Like for example, if you want to be a private
Oh.
water company in North Carolina, you have to go to the North Carolina Utility Commission and show your cost to build and your cost to serve,
Mhm.
and then you work with them to set a rate, and they cap your return on equity. Okay. And some generally around 9-10%.
Mhm.
All right. Make it like a treasury bill, make it like, a bond or something like that, or a CD that has
Mhm.
a guaranteed rate of return.
Mhm.
And you only, and if you're getting to the point where you're exceeding that rate of return, the money must be reinvested back into lowering costs for your patients and things like that.
So
This is the only time you'll hear me say that about any private industry, but I think we're at a point in healthcare where I don't see any other way around getting healthcare back on track. in
So
this
there
country.
is always this back and forth between the Department of Insurance and insurance carriers. So insurance carriers play this game because when they do come in, they have to show their financials, right? And in order to write business in the state, they have to file and go through absolutely tons of regulations to apply to regulations, but also for their financial solvency and everything else. Insurance companies are really good at something, hiding the ball.
Oh yes.
So any regulation that you put out there, they are going to hide the ball on how to do it. So I appreciate what you're saying, but in some regards, it doesn't matter if you put a cap on it or not. They're going to hide the balls and figure out ways to make sure that they don't look like they're making that much money. But
Mhm.
I see what you're saying. We need to have a strong insurance commissioner who can stand up to these insurance companies and say, hey, if you're going to do business in my state, then you are going to play by these rules. And
Mhm.
I'm down with you on that about how to regulate them. But
Well, and I think the challenge comes in is that you have to be willing. All right, because the people who work, in the regulatory agencies and stuff like that, make a third, a fourth, a fifth, a 25th of
Mhm.
what trying
yeah.
to find
Yeah.
where the money's hitting versus the ones who are hiding it,
Right.
who are making countless amounts of money.
Mhm.
You want to find where it's hidden, you got to hire the guy that knows how
That's
to
right.
hide it.
That's
And
right.
in order to hire him, you got to pay him or her a boat load of money. Now, going through the state salaries and stuff like that, looking at a guy or a woman who you're paying $450,000 a year, that gets alarm bells going. How is taxpayer money going to that? If you want to find where it's being hid, you got to hire the people who know how to hide it.
Absolutely.
And in order to do that, you got to pay them. It's the same thing at the SEC with stock and finance and everything like that. You got to pay them for it. That's just how it's going to work.
Yeah. And then also, like, market principles should play into here. We do not have enough insurance companies in the state to make them competitive, right?
Yes.
So there's this whole thing between regulation and competition. And so sometimes if you over-regulate, then you are going to get exactly what you don't want, which is one or two carriers who write policies in the state. I mean, the state of Florida and the property thing, they're dealing with that, right? So they started over-regulating, mandating coverages. Insurance companies will say, guess what? We're not going to be profitable, so we're not going to write in your state. We don't have to, because you're exactly right. Insurance companies are no more than big banks.
Yeah.
Right. And then that they don't make money off writing insurance. They make money on holding your money and reinvesting it. And then when they return some of it, then they want to they make their money on their investments. They do not make money on your policy.
No, 100%. So in the show prep, you sent over controversial bill HB, and you stopped. So I'm just curious, was this like a brain lapse or something like that? You were like, oh, there's a but I can't remember which one it was.
Well, so it's just going back to this thing. There's oh my gosh, county commissioners and municipalities are all up in arms.
Oh, I know about this bill.
You do?
Oh yeah, I'm a fan.
Tell me why you're a fan.
I'm a fan because so for I'm not going to be popular with our listeners,
but
I'm not a fan of this. But basically, it speeds up permitting requirements for development and stuff like that. It also it reins in a little bit on land use planning and things like that. That basically downzoning somebody that they already have something by right. Very property rights focused, which I'm a big fan of, and everything like that. But yes, I have received a number of different phone calls from folks who are very unhappy about this and what it would do. I know the League of Municipalities is absolutely up in arms about it.
Yeah, so
which doesn't offend me at all. Having been someone who attended many a League of Municipalities event, I don't mind it at all. I can say that. You can't. Yeah, you have to be diplomatic about this. I can say that.
Well, okay. So one thing that is concerning to me about the bill is that it will allow civil lawsuits against decision makers for damages tied to development decisions. You like that part. You're laughing on the inside.
I'm not laughing on the inside.
You're laughing on the outside.
So I cannot confirm or deny, but I may have several years ago made a similar suggestion that something like that because here's my thing.
Okay, so tell me why. Tell me why.
From a developer standpoint, okay? And I know developers are punching bags, evil. Everybody hates them, yada yada yada. But here's the deal: in order for a developer to get a project to be heard, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get it in front of a body.
Okay.
And the developer comes in and says, your land use plan says you want this here.
Okay.
So I spend a couple $100,000 to develop a plan, to go through your processes, to pay your fees, to pay my people, everything like that to get it in front of you. Because your land use plan says that's what you want there. Well, when I get it to you, you tell me no. But your land use plan says that's what you wanted there. That the land use plan is the document that a local government says we want this here. So when I come to you and bring you what you said you have wanted, it is completely unfair to then tell me no when I brought you what you said you wanted. And so then the only other process developers have is to let it go and eat it and try to come back a year later, or they can appeal it to a superior court. And if you do that, and the superior court looks at it and says, oh, well, you know what, developer, you were right. A lot of times what they do is they just kick it back and have it reheard. My whole thing was like, look, if you're going to deny something that you say your land use plan calls for, and I appeal it, and the judge says, you know what, you were right, they were wrong, you've got to kick it back, then I should be due something in compensatory because I've had to pay lawyer fees and things like that. I should be due something back for you guys being wrong. Right now, there is nothing. And so what it would do is it would force better land use planning. It would force stricter guidelines on what you say you want where and things like that. But also, it's not going to have these private developers because, again, if it costs me more as a developer, it costs you more to buy my house. It costs you more to shop in my place. It costs you more to come into my building. Because I'm passing that on. That's the way it's going to work. So if that's the case, then you want to lower housing costs and things like that. You have to bring down regulation and you have to quit making me eat all of these other costs when I bring you something you say you want and then you deny me. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I am not going to be popular. I'm simply I can already tell that Billy's looking at me. Billy's like, I'm not sure I'm a fan of this guy anymore.
So, the crux of the problem and the reason why is that electeds are hearing constantly from their constituents that they are tired of growth. And to be honest with you, so am I. I'm tired of it because it's really not that I don't want other people here. I mean, maybe not from New Jersey. Everywhere else is fine. But I kid. But what it for me is that we have not invested in the infrastructure in North Carolina to support these developments. It's not that people are like development bad. It's they're like roads bad, schools expensive, all of this stuff. So I think we should really turn over some of the more decisions for these two. If you're going to do this, then I think we should probably decentralize DOT and let the county start doing roads and fund it that way, and let the people who are making the decisions be able to handle the growth and their infrastructure at the same time.
I'm not opposed to that.
I swear,
I'm
I
not
think we'd
opposed to
blow
that
it
at
all
all. I'm
up.
a big fan of local control.
Me too.
I'm a huge fan of local control.
And then being able to sue them if they don't do what you want
Exactly.
them to.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, hey, well, not what I want them to do. What they say they want.
That's fair. That is
what
fair.
they say they want.
Right.
If your land use plan says we want that to be houses, and I bring you houses, don't turn me down. Change your land use plan. Make it easier. Get more control on that. Do your job up front so it doesn't cost me on the back end.
All right, I see it. Sounds
Because
like
again, if you want to shut down, great. Just get used to paying higher taxes and paying more for houses.
All right.
Supply and demand hasn't changed in a couple thousand years.
Well, if you have any concerns about that, you can call into next week's show where David and I will discuss more growth and his unpopular position.
My unpopular position. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.